Everyone is currently obsessed with the narrative that India is the next big thing, or the inevitable China killer, right? We see PM Modi flying around the world, getting hugged by every Western leader like he's the lost member of a boy band, and they call it the Vishwa Guru era, the age of the global teacher. But if you actually look past the shiny PR clips and the filtered drone shots of Mumbai's three nice buildings, you start to see a very different strategy at play. Because the real secret isn't that India is becoming a manufacturing powerhouse, it's that India has realized its most profitable export isn't software or textiles, it's the people themselves. It's a calculated state-sponsored demographic flood designed to keep a struggling domestic economy on life support through remittances. Simple as that, okay? Think about the math for a second. Because the numbers don't lie as much as politicians do, in 2025, India pulled in over $135 billion in remittances, which is more money sent back by immigrants than the entire GDP of countries like Morocco or Slovakia. The government knows they can't provide jobs for the millions of youth hitting the market every year, so the solution is to encourage them to leave. They flood Canada, the UK, and Australia, take up jobs, and send those sweet dollars back home to support extended families. It's essentially a state-sanctioned pyramid scheme, where the product is the population. They go abroad, they settle, they breed, as the critics say, and they create a permanent pipeline of foreign currency that stabilizes the rupee, while the actual infrastructure back home remains a disaster. But why does the West keep falling for it? Why are countries like the USA and Canada rolling out the red carpet for a nation that is still slum-ridden and struggling with basic civic sense? It's not because they love the food. It's because of a massive, sophisticated lobbying machine that operates exactly like AIPAC does for Israel. You have groups like USINPAC and the Hindu American Foundation that have bought their way into the halls of power, convincing Western governments that India is a strategic powerhouse necessary to counter China, basically selling a dream to Washington that India is an efficient democratic alternative, when in reality, the backing is just deep pockets and political donations. The West is so desperate to replace China that they've chosen a country that still thinks cow dung chips can protect you from mobile phone radiation. Yes, that's a real thing. A BJP politician literally marketed these chips to the masses, and they sold like wildfire. This is the innovation we're told will lead the 21st century, right? The joke is that while the West talks about India being the new China, the actual companies are looking at the quality and running the other way. Because if you look at the 2025-2026 manufacturing stats, India is actually losing the race to Vietnam. Vietnam's manufacturing now accounts for nearly 5% of its GDP, while India is stuck in the mid-teens, struggling with red tape, corruption, and a lack of actual skill. When a company like Apple moves to Vietnam, the parts actually fit together. When they move to India, they deal with strikes, power outages, and a level of inefficiency that makes you wonder how they ever got the superpower label. Vietnam has officially surpassed India in electronics export growth because they actually focus on manufacturing quality instead of just manufacturing slogans. India is great at making statues, but they're not so great at making semiconductors, okay? And speaking of statues, let's talk about the cultural friction. You go to Brampton or parts of New Jersey now, and you see these massive statues of deities popping up in residential areas, and the native citizens are looking at this and thinking, what happened to the neighborhood? Because it shows a total lack of civic sense. You have these upper-class Indians who have the money to migrate, yet they bring a disregard for local norms and aesthetics, and if the rich ones are already causing this much friction, imagine what happens when the poor ones start creating chaos. We're already seeing it in Australia, where in early 2026 the student visa rejection rate for Indians hit a record 40%. Because authorities realized that thousands were using fake degrees and study visas as a backdoor for low-wage labor and crime. The dream is starting to look like a nightmare for host countries. At the end of the day, PM Modi's new India is a house of cards held together by Western fear of China and a massive amount of lobbying money, because you can hug every president in the world, but you can't hide the fact that your main economic strategy is just sending people away so they can send money back. The world is starting to realize that the Vishwa Guru is actually just a master of PR, and eventually companies will move to Vietnam. Western suburbs will be filled with statues no one asked for, and the anti-radiation cow dung will be the only thing left of the tech dream. It's a brilliant scam when you think about it. You export the population, import the dollars, and let the rest of the world deal with the consequences. Simple as that. Okay, if you call out the lack of quality, you're labeled a hater. But if you look at FDI trends, even investors are pulling back, with India sitting around 1.5% of GDP, while Vietnam is at 4 to 5%, which isn't a rounding error. It's a clear vote of no confidence. They see the chaos, the planning issues, and the lack of infrastructure. And they realize a country focused more on internal debates than industrial output isn't where you build a high-tech future. But hey, keep the hugs coming. Maybe the next one will magically build a semiconductor plant. Simple as that, okay? The reality is that the so-called Indian dream is being subsidized by Western systems that don't even realize the long-term cost. And when the illusion finally breaks, no amount of branding will be able to fix what was structurally weak from the start.